History is replete with unexpected reversals, moments where the seemingly impossible becomes reality. The rise and fall of civilizations often follows predictable patterns, but sometimes the course of history takes a sharp, unforeseen turn. Empires rise with grandeur and ambition, their influence spreading far and wide. Yet inevitably empires fall, succumbing to internal strife, external pressures, or the simple passage of time. But few stories in the annals of history are as astonishing, as utterly improbable, as the day Polish soldiers marched triumphantly through the gates of the Kremlin, a sight that would have seemed like a fever dream just decades prior. They entered not as diplomats, not as allies, but as conquerors, their banners held high in the heart of their defeated foe. In the early 1600s, a period of immense upheaval and shifting alliances, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, a vast and powerful realm, held Russia's fate, its very existence, in its hands. For a brief, electrifying moment, a Polish prince, the ambitious and charismatic Ladislaw, was even declared Tsar of all Russia. A notion that defied centuries of tradition and animosity. This isn't the stuff of legend or folklore, it's a documented historical event. The established balance of power in Eastern Europe, a delicate dance of kingdoms and empires, was violently upended, leaving a power vacuum in its wake. Today, this extraordinary episode is almost entirely forgotten, relegated to the dusty corners of history books, overshadowed by the more widely known tales of Napoleon and Hitler's disastrous campaigns in Russia. But 4 centuries ago, in a moment of unparalleled triumph, the proud Polish eagle soared over Moscow's iconic golden domes, a symbol of Polish dominance. The famed winged hussars, the elite heavy cavalry of Poland-Lithuania, with their distinctive wings and fearsome reputation, patrolled the city's streets, enforcing order and projecting power. How did Poland, a nation so often perceived as Russia's victim, caught between powerful neighbors, manage to become its conqueror, even for a fleeting moment? The answer lies in a perfect storm of ambition, political chaos, and unprecedented opportunity, a confluence of factors that allowed Poland to seize its moment in the sun. In the early 17th century, Poland-Lithuania was at the zenith of its power and influence. It was a sprawling multi-ethnic powerhouse, a beacon of relative stability and prosperity in a turbulent region, uniquely led by an elected king, chosen by the nobility. Russia, meanwhile, was rapidly unraveling, teetering on the brink of complete collapse. The country was ravaged by a brutal civil war. Widespread famine decimated the population, and a profound crisis of leadership left the nation rudderless. This period of intense instability and turmoil became known as the Time of Troubles, a dark chapter in Russian history when the very existence of the Russian state was threatened. The story of Poland's almost forgotten invasion of Russia is far more than a simple military campaign or a territorial dispute. It's a gripping tale of audacious impostors claiming the throne, epic battles fought with unwavering ferocity, and a national uprising that would ultimately forge a new and enduring Russian identity. And at the end of this tumultuous period, the Romanov dynasty, which would rule Russia for centuries to come, would rise from the ashes of Polish occupation, establishing a new era of autocratic rule. To truly understand how this extraordinary turn of events unfolded, we must first delve into the profound darkness that had enveloped Russia at the close of the 16th century, setting the stage for the Time of Troubles and the subsequent Polish intervention. Russia's descent into chaos, a period of profound instability and upheaval, was about to begin. The very foundations of the Russian state were about to be tested in ways no one could have foreseen. It began with a death, the seemingly natural end of a reign, but one that would unravel the fabric of Russian society. In 1598, Tsar Fyodor I, the last of the Rurik dynasty, died without an heir to inherit the throne. His passing marked not just the end of a life, but the end of an era. This event brought an end to the centuries-old Rurik dynasty, a lineage that had shaped Russia's identity and destiny for generations. The resulting power vacuum created a dangerous situation, a void that ambitious individuals and factions would desperately try to fill. This unleashed a storm of intrigue and backstabbing among the boyars, Russia's powerful nobles, each vying for control and influence in the absence of a clear successor. Amidst the chaos, Boris Godunov, a shrewd and ambitious figure, seized the throne, stepping into the role of Tsar. However, his rule was constantly haunted by persistent rumors and whispers that cast a shadow over his legitimacy. Many believed he'd orchestrated the murder of the young Tsarevich Dmitry, the last direct heir to the Rurik dynasty, to clear his path to power. Consequently, his authority remained shaky and contested, and the people never truly accepted him as their rightful ruler, fueling resentment and dissent. Then, as if the political turmoil wasn't enough, disaster struck, compounding the existing problems and pushing Russia closer to the brink. A catastrophic famine, triggered by a period of global cooling and widespread crop failures, swept across the land, claiming the lives of millions of innocent people. As a result, society began to break down under the immense strain, with order collapsing and chaos reigning supreme. In the depths of despair, reports of cannibalism surfaced in the streets of Moscow, a horrifying testament to the desperation and suffering that gripped the nation. The state was failing to provide for its people, and hope was rapidly vanishing as the situation spiraled out of control. This perfect storm of dynastic crisis, the absence of a legitimate heir, created a volatile and unpredictable environment. Political illegitimacy further eroded trust in the government and fueled widespread discontent among the population. And starvation, the gnawing hunger that plagued the land, primed Russia for widespread rebellion and social unrest. The land was filled with desperate peasants, driven to the edge by hunger and oppression, ready to fight for their survival. Feuding nobles, locked in constant power struggles, further destabilized the country and undermined any semblance of unity. And lawless Cossacks roamed the countryside, adding to the chaos and preying on the vulnerable. Russia was a tinderbox, dry and brittle, waiting for a single spark to ignite a devastating conflagration. That spark would soon come from the west, carried on the winds of ambition and deceit. A mysterious figure emerged, claiming to be the lost Tsarevich Dmitry, miraculously alive and ready to reclaim his rightful throne. His arrival would ignite a firestorm of rebellion and civil war that would consume the kingdom, leaving a trail of destruction and devastation in its wake. The time of troubles, already a period of immense suffering and turmoil, was about to reach its boiling point, threatening to tear Russia apart at the seams. The time of troubles was a period defined by uncertainty and upheaval. Amidst this chaos stepped a young man in Poland, Lithuania, a figure shrouded in mystery and ambition. He boldly claimed to be Tsarevich Dmitry, the presumed dead son of Ivan the Terrible, heir to the Russian throne. His claim sent ripples of shock and intrigue throughout the land. This was Tsarevich Dmitry, son of Ivan the Terrible, supposedly murdered years before, a tragic event that had cast a long shadow over Russia. Was he the true prince, miraculously spared from a grim fate, or was he a masterful imposter, a cunning actor playing a dangerous game? The question hung heavy in the air. No one knew for sure, the truth obscured by rumor and political maneuvering. But many, desperate for stability and hope, wanted to believe in his claim. Polish and Lithuanian nobles, always watchful of their neighbor to the east, saw an opportunity in this pretender, a chance to gain influence and power. They decided to back Dmitry, providing him with resources and support, hoping to perhaps rule Russia through him, a puppet on the throne. They generously gave him money, filling his coffers with the promise of future riches. They supplied him with arms, equipping his followers for the battles to come. And they furnished him with a small army, a force ready to march on Moscow and claim the throne. In 1604, false Dmitry, fueled by ambition and foreign support, crossed into Russia, ready to stake his claim. And his story, whether truth or fabrication, spread like wildfire, igniting the hopes and fears of the Russian people. Boris Godunov's unpopularity, a result of famine, political missteps, and accusations of regicide, made Dmitry's claim, however dubious, irresistible to many Russians yearning for a change in leadership. His army swelled with peasants, desperate for relief from their hardships and oppression. Cossacks, fierce warriors seeking adventure and plunder, flocked to his banner. And disaffected nobles, eager to undermine Godunov's rule and advance their own interests, joined his cause. Then, in a twist of fate that seemed to defy all logic, Godunov died in 1605, leaving a power vacuum in his wake. This sudden death dramatically altered the political landscape, clearing Dmitry's path to Moscow and the coveted throne. With little resistance, Dmitry entered the Kremlin, the heart of Russian power. And in a grand ceremony filled with pomp and circumstance, he was crowned Tsar, seemingly fulfilling his improbable destiny. But his reign was brief, a fleeting moment in the long and turbulent history of Russia. his Polish customs so different from the traditions of the Russian court, and his Catholic wife, a symbol of foreign influence, alienated the elite and stirred resentment among the deeply Orthodox population. The boyars who had initially helped him rise to power, seeing their own influence waning, soon plotted his fall, whispering in the shadows and weaving a web of intrigue. In 1606, Dmitry was murdered in a violent coup, his reign brought to a bloody and abrupt end. His body was burned in the public square, a symbolic act of rejection and condemnation, and his ashes were fired from a cannon toward Poland, a final defiant gesture aimed at the land that had spawned this ill-fated pretender. But the chaos, far from being quelled by Dmitry's death, was far from over. Russia's nightmare, the time of troubles, was only deepening, plunging the country further into darkness and despair. Dmitry's death plunged Russia deeper into turmoil. Vasily Shuisky became Tsar, but his power barely extended beyond Moscow. The country fractured. Warlords seized territory, peasants rebelled, and a second false Dmitry appeared, setting up a rival court near Moscow. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth watched with growing interest. At first, Polish involvement was unofficial, but soon King Sigismund III saw a chance to reshape Eastern Europe. When Shuisky allied with Sweden, Poland's rival, Sigismund had his pretext for war. In 1609, the Polish army invaded, led by brilliant commanders and the fearsome winged hussars. This was no longer about backing a pretender, it was a full-scale invasion. Russia, exhausted and divided, faced the might of a united Commonwealth. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation that would decide the fate of both nations. The Polish army was about to march on Moscow. The fate of Russia hung in the balance. The world watched as history teetered on a knife's edge. The Polish invasion began with the siege of Smolensk, but the real breakthrough came at the Battle of Pushino in 1610. Hetman Żołkiewski, with fewer than 7,000 men, faced a Russian-Swedish force 5 times larger. Against all odds, the winged hussars shattered the enemy lines in a legendary charge. Moscow panicked. Tsar Shuisky was deposed, and the boyars formed a provisional government. Seeing the Poles as the lesser evil, they opened Moscow's gates. In autumn 1610, Polish troops marched into the Kremlin without a fight. Żołkiewski became the de facto ruler of Russia, dictating terms from the heart of Moscow. For the first time, a foreign army controlled the Russian capital. The unthinkable had happened. Poland ruled from the Kremlin, but the occupation would prove far more complicated than conquest. With Moscow occupied, the 7 boyars offered the Russian throne to Władysław, son of the Polish king. The plan, a personal union between Poland, Lithuania, and Russia, creating Europe's largest state. The boyars demanded Władysław convert to Orthodoxy and respect Russian traditions. Hetman Żołkiewski agreed, hoping for a peaceful union. Thousands swore allegiance to their new Polish Tsar, but King Sigismund III refused. He wanted the throne for himself and rejected the compromise. He would not let his son convert, nor accept a union of equals. The Polish garrison was left stranded, enforcing the rule of a Tsar who would not come. The dream of union collapsed, replaced by the reality of foreign occupation. Distrust and resentment grew in Moscow. The seeds of rebellion were sown. The failed union turned the Polish garrison from potential allies into hated occupiers. Unpaid and desperate, Polish soldiers plundered Moscow, fueling resentment. The Orthodox Church called for resistance, branding the Poles as heretics. In March 1611, a riot erupted into full-scale rebellion. The Poles responded with brutal force, setting fires that devastated the city. The occupation became a siege, with the Polish garrison trapped in the Kremlin. Across Russia, a new spirit of unity emerged, rallying around the call to expel the invaders. A second national army, led by Minin and Pozharsky, marched to liberate Moscow. The final battle for Moscow was brutal. Minin and Pozharsky's army besieged the starving Polish garrison in the Kremlin. A Polish relief force failed to break the siege. Inside, the defenders endured months of starvation and horror. On November 4, 1612, the last Polish troops surrendered. Moscow was liberated. Russia's Unity Day was born. In 1613, a National Assembly elected Mikhail Romanov as Tsar, ending the time of troubles. The Romanov dynasty would rule for 300 years, its legitimacy built on the myth of national liberation. The story of Minin and Pozharsky became a symbol of Russian unity and resilience. From the ashes of occupation, a new Russian empire would rise. Why is this story so little known today? For the Romanovs, it was easier to celebrate resistance than admit Moscow once welcomed a Polish Tsar. In Poland, the episode became a bittersweet memory, proof of past glory but also a lost opportunity. As Russia grew into a superpower and Poland struggled for survival, the narrative shifted. The idea of Poland conquering Moscow faded from memory, overshadowed by later conflicts. Historians focused on the rise of the Romanovs and the partitions of Poland. Today, the story survives only in the margins, a reminder that history is never as simple as it seems. The roles of victor and vanquished are never set in stone.